His name is Moise MacIntyre. His grandfather's name was a Chipewyan word meaning he who hunts the bear. He is a treaty Indian, born on the reserve at Dipper Lake in northern Saskatchewan. The devout explorer David Thompson passed this way in 1798 and wrote in his journal, "The Supreme Being has given this country to the deer and to the red man forever. Here, as his fathers for centuries past have done, he may roam free as the wind." Moise MacIntyre can give up his treaty rights and leave the reserve any time he wishes. But he chooses to live and work here where he was born, and to live more or less as his ancestors have for centuries. The pattern of life is as old as time. The men hunt, then the women take over. They live off the land. Almost everything they need is right on their doorstep. The only thing they bought at a store was the rope. You don't even use a knife for preparing the hides. The shin bone of a moose is a better instrument. It doesn't tear the skin. The tamarack gives you logs for the smokehouse, and balsam boughs, the sweet smoke that cures the moose meat. There is a cliché idea that Indians take no thought for the morrow. Of course, they don't think in terms of saving up money for their old age, but they make very sure of food supplies for the hard times of the winter ahead. The land gives you what you need to live, or you die. That was the old Indian pattern. What did they basically need to survive? Meat, fish, berries, skins for clothing, skins to make the teepees. When the meat was cured, it was always pounded into pemmican. Usually they mixed in Saskatoon berries for sweetness. A few bags of pemmican and a hunter could carry enough food for a month. That was the old way of life. On the reserve, the old way is changing. It's no longer the vanishing Indian. There are twice as many Indians now in northern Saskatchewan as there were 20 years ago. Twice as many mouths to feed. Moise's father usually takes his grandchildren along when it's a good day. He saved up some money trapping years ago to buy an outboard. And Dipper Lake is good for pickerel, whitefish. The catch is good enough to vary the diet of the villagers. There are only 60 mouths to feed, not counting the dogs. The dogs have to be kept healthy and nourished. Winter is coming. People on the reserve are generous by custom. You don't say, "I caught this. This is mine." Everybody gets a share. At Dipper Lake now, there are new ways of doing things, though it is still based on the old Indian way. As a band of hunters in the old days, they worked together. Now they've organized a fishermen's cooperative. By pooling their resources, and with some outside help, they have adopted modern methods. Fishing at Dipper Lake has become a commercial enterprise. The fish will make dinners in Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Calgary. On many reserves in Canada, the economic resources are so slim that a decent standard of living is impossible. Hopeless. People are urged to move away from the reserves and get jobs and assimilate. But at Dipper Lake, they manage fairly well. Moes says, "Why should I go away? These are my people. This is where I was born. This is where I shall die." Father Morrow, who was stationed here for 40 years, was too ill on this Sunday to conduct the service, but they went ahead anyway. All the young fellows have, in their time, left the reserve to go to residential school, but they've always come back here. The old men have never gone outside. Life hasn't been too bad here, for those who survived. It used to be that because of white men's diseases to which they had no immunity, more than half the kids born never reached maturity. But that's changing now. Every Sunday, Granny MacIntyre takes her daughter and grandchildren for a trip, but it's only to go a quarter of a mile down the lake. Dipper Lake is her domain. No one can take it away from her. the domain of the living and the dead. An early explorer's account of the Chipewyans reads, "The woman's son had died, and she had to mourn for him 12 moons, crying in a low voice. About 6 months after this I saw her again. She was no longer a sorrowing woman. I inquired of her the cause of the change. She replied, 'When my little son went to the other world, there was none to receive him. He was friendless, and wandered alone in the pitching track of the tents. 2 moons ago his father died. He has gone to my son and will take care of him. His father will always be with him, and when I die, I shall go to them.'" In winter, the Chipewyan bands used to travel enormous distances in search of game. Moes still spends the winter on the trap lines, but there's not much money in it. Fur prices are low, and a man doesn't want to range too far from home. He may be away a week at a time, but that's still reckoned close in to the settlement. The temperature was 42 below zero. It took him 4 hours to get from Dipper Lake to Chipewyan, 25 miles away. A very old man from Dipper had died in his sleep. Moes had come to Chipewyan for the burial and to visit relatives and friends. When Moes says, "I don't want to leave here," he means we are together. Some say you could better yourself if you went away and got a job driving a truck in Prince Albert. Lots of money in that. But on the reserve, you can go into any house. Their food is your food. In the old days, the Chipewyans lived and moved as a band. They had no governor, no ruler. If there was a chief, it meant only a man who was listened to, because he could tell where the caribou were likely to be found. Only as a band did they know the secret of survival in a cold, hard land. The old man had lived through the worst of times. When he was a child, it looked as if the band might disappear entirely. Yet by the skin of their teeth they have come through. The band of Chipewyans still lives to see the patriarch laid in the earth of his ancestors. In the north there is poverty. But there isn't loneliness. The economists and sociologists are justifiably troubled by the grim conditions of life on some reserves. And some are baffled by the reluctance of many to leave it behind for the white man's world. They forget that some of the values of the old Indian ways still prevail.